A+ലേക്കുള്ള വഴി ഇനി തനിയെ തുറക്കാം. Subscribe to the ENCLAPS channel. Ring the bell button and open success. It's that easy.
Welcome to the wonders of life. How did so many living things come to be on Earth? Let's see if there's an answer to this in biology. Biology describes the origin and evolution of life on the basis of experimental observations and evidences. The most plausible explanation given by the science is that origin of life is the result of the accidental fusion of inorganic molecules. The question of whether this is happening elsewhere in millions of celestial bodies is still active today through numerous space explorations. Many theories have emerged as to how life on Earth evolved into such a diverse range of life forms. Today's class is a journey through the major theories of evolution. Many scientists have tried to explain the evolutionary history of life from primitive cells to the biodiversity we see today into scientific theories. The first such attempt was made by the French biologist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. The acquired traits are traits that organisms acquire during their lifetime. Lamarck explained that such traits are passed down through generations to form new species. According to Lamarck, in the early days, giraffes had short necks. As they faced food shortages, they gradually stretched on tall trees. As a result, giraffes with long necks have emerged over generations. But this explanation was not accepted by the scientific community because such acquired traits are not inherited. The first scientific theory of evolution was proposed by the English naturalist Charles Robert Darwin. Darwin adopted a scientific method for formulating inferences through observation and data analysis. The scientific credibility paved way for a larger acceptance of Darwin's theory of evolution. Darwin's voyage to the Galapagos Island in the ship HMS Beagle was a turning point both in his life and in the history of the theory of evolution. He developed his theory of evolution from a study of life on the Galapagos Island. Darwin was just 22 years old when he joined a government-appointed expedition to map the coast. By the time he returned to Britain, 7 years later, he had accumulated evidences to support the theory. At the age of 50, after such experiments and observations, he introduced the theory of natural selection into the world in his famous book, Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. This theory changed the prevailing conceptions, gained great acceptance in the scientific world. Finches are one of the most important species studied by Darwin in the Galapagos Island. The diversity of the beaks of these birds caught Darwin's attention. The insectivorous finches have small beaks, and those that feed on cactus plant have sharp beaks. There were also woodpecker finches that used sharp beaks to pick up small twigs for feeding on worms from the holes of the tree trunks. The ground finches that feed on seeds with large beaks were also present. It is clear that the birds observed by Darwin had beaks adapted to their feeding habits. Darwin's thought was influenced by the economist Thomas Robert Malthus. The rate of food production is not proportionate to the growth of human population. Thomas Robert Malthus pointed out that scarcity of food led to diseases, starvation, and struggle for existence. Darwin proposed the theory of natural selection by combining such ideas. Let us see what were the main ideas of Darwin's theory of natural selection. Organisms with variations, overproduction, struggle for existence, those with no favorable variations, and those with favorable variations. Those with non-favorable variations were destroyed, whereas those with favorable variations went natural selection. They survived. Favorable variations are transferred to the next generation. Accumulation of variations inherited through generations and led to the origin of new species. Each species produces more offspring than it can survive. They compete for food, shelter, and mate. As the number of creatures increases and the resources become less, the competition becomes more intense. Many variations are visible in organisms. These variations may be favorable or unfavorable. Those with favorable variations survive in the struggle for existence. Others are eliminated. Variations that are inherited through generations and repeated differently help to form new species that are different from their ancestors. This type of selection done by nature led to the diversity of species that we see around us. This is the explanation of Darwin's theory, which is known as the theory of natural selection. Charles Darwin was able to identify the constant changes in living beings, but he could not explain how they occur. The gene and the chromosomes were not known in his time. The scientific community modified Darwinism by incorporating discoveries in the field of genetics, cytology, geology, and fossil studies. Neo-Darwinism is a theory that revolved around the knowledge gained after Darwin. It is well known that sudden changes occurred in organisms are caused by mutation in the genes of the organisms itself. Mutation theories explains that new species are formed by the inheritance of such changes. This theory was formulated by the Dutch scientist Hugo de Vries. Later it was explained that mutations that occur variations led to the evolution of species. Today we discussed the explanation given by the scientific world for evolution. See you again with more details on evolution. Bye.
3 ലക്ഷത്തിലേറെ വരുന്ന ചോദ്യോത്തരങ്ങൾ ഏറ്റവും കുറഞ്ഞ ചിലവിൽ സ്വന്തമാക്കുവാൻ ഉടൻ തന്നെ ഡൗൺലോഡ് ചെയ്യൂ എൻക്ലാപ്സ് ദ ലേണിംഗ് ആപ്പ്.